Welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 192.
Don't be afraid of trying. Be afraid of doing nothing.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Have you turned your key and heard that dreaded tick, 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 tick because of a dead battery? No worries. I've got the Naoko Genius Boost Jump Starter. This compact tool fits in your glove box and features rechargeable lithium battery technology that will start a dead battery in your car, boat, truck, or RV. It packs a whopping 12-volt, 400 amp starting power and can start up to 20 dead batteries on a single charge. Plus, it has built-in spark-proof technology with reverse polarity protection to safely jumpstart your vehicle. The compact, ergonomically designed clamps are solid copper for maximum conductivity, and there's a built-in ultra-bright dual LED flashlight with 7 modes, including an SOS emergency strobe. It's easily rechargeable with a USB outlet, and you can charge your smartphone or tablet while you're on the road. Works on any 12-volt lead-acid battery. The Genius Boost from Naoko is the ultimate emergency tool that's safe and easy to use. Quality design, state-of-the-art technology from Naoko, your battery care source since 1914. Get yours at geniuschargers.com. Hello, automotive enthusiasts. Today I am so excited to introduce a very special guest, Shinoo Mapleton. Shinoo, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I'm strapped in here with my 6-point racing harness, ready to go.
All right. I love it when my guests come prepared for a fun ride. Shinoo Mapleton grew up in Detroit, and he admits his first memory is looking out the window of his preschool at the cars that would go by. He started Sector 111 in 2003 and operates out of Temecula, California. It's a company that focuses on lightweight sports cars, including Lotus, Ariel Atom, Briggs Automotive Company, and Alfa Romeo. He's a lifelong auto fanatic, and he earned a mechanical engineering degree at GMI-Engineering Management Institute, which is now the Kettering University. He started in the industry in 1985, working at Pontiac Fiero Assembly, and then he moved to 3M Automotive. Today, he's chasing his automotive dreams. So, Shinoo, I told our listeners just a little bit about you. Would you take a moment and share some more about your history, your business, your interests, and, of course, your passion for automobiles?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool car fanatic. It's my first memory. I've been passionate about cars from, the first memory. And I was one of those kids that could point out any car from half a mile away by just seeing its taillight, I was the kid that knew all the specs on the back of Road and Track and could, recite that, better than I could do in a spelling bee. But yeah, I love cars, and I still love cars. And growing up in Detroit, it's almost a part of everyday life there.
Sure.
And good place for a kid who loves cars to be. So, I grew up going, taking relatives and friends to visit the Henry Ford Museum and the River Rouge factory and the Mustang plant. Those were regular trips, that we would take. So, seeing these cars being built and being around them all was just, I was basically blessed or doomed, depending on what your perspective is. But, I ended up having a little internship at Ford when I was a high school senior, and ultimately I got into GMI, which was at one time known as General Motors Institute. And that school is a 5-year program, and it has a cooperative program from day one. And so I actually got hired by Pontiac Fiero at their assembly plant. So I started there in 1985 and, worked in the industry straight out of high school, essentially.
Yeah.
3 months of school and then 3 months of work. And so it was great. I was there until the factory closed. And, it was a wonderful place to cut your teeth,
Yeah.
No better place, for a kid who was wet behind the ears, engineering student, learning about, the automotive industry, because that factory was quite innovative. The car itself was very innovative, but they also used manufacturing techniques that were very innovative, and then even management techniques like the team concept and how they had adopted SPC. And so Deming was our guru there, and we really followed many of the what's now pretty common, but 30 years ago these were very, very innovative techniques and tactics and methods, and so ultimately we felt that we were doing frankly it was some of the best work within General Motors at the time, and so anyway, it was a cool place to be, and when they shut the factory I had to go find another job, and
sure.
1988 was a pretty tough time to be looking for a job in the automotive industry, and as a student, your options are a little even slimmer still. But
right.
I managed to get employment with 3M in their automotive division, and they're based there in Detroit as well. And ultimately, they sent me to St. Paul, Minnesota, to finish up my thesis, and I ended up getting hired on by my boss out there, and worked in an advanced manufacturing group on automotive products, and then moved into technical services into the laboratory. And I worked supporting Asian operations through the mid-'90s. So I traveled to all the major Asian countries many, many times, supporting automotive and motorcycles. So it's just, as a car guy, and as it turns out, I got into motorcycling. In fact, it was the last year of my college years when I had this old beat-down Saab 99.
I remember those.
Yeah, for those of people that may remember that car. And it basically, had a cracked cylinder head, and I was going through coolant. Every time I drive the car, I'd go
sure.
through a jug of coolant, a big, fog that was coming out of the back of the car. And anyways, it was an old car, and I had just been offered a full-time employment as an engineer, and so I ordered my first brand new car, which was a '91 Volkswagen GTI.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So my car was kind of broken down, and it was the beginning of the summer, and I bought a motorcycle, and I rode through the summer with just a bike until this GTI showed up, which was in the fall. And so,
nice.
Anyways, I stayed at 3M through most of the 90s, and the car fanatic, motorcycle fanatic, and as I was mentioning earlier about the Asian operations was kind of cool because half of it was actually in support of motorcycle operations, because in the mid-'90s, most of the Asian countries, obviously the motorcycle business was, from a unit perspective, was much higher than automotive.
Right.
So we did a lot of work there, in particular in Japan and India and Indonesia, and, it was really, really a fun experience.
Well, tell me a little bit about, so I'm really interested in this business you've got going now, and you started this back in 2003, so it's been around for a while. You guys build some really interesting cars, and I know when I had Bill Thomas on Cars, he talked about this new project that you guys are kind of working on together a little bit. But tell our listening audience about Sector 111.
Sector 111, I started that kind of to support the new Lotus Elise that was coming to the U.S. I had a car on order and had been on this wait list for a couple of years, and I kind of looked around in the market, and I had always tuned my cars. I'd always made modifications to them to make the car a bit more of what I wanted, whether it was wheels or suspensions or exhaust systems, things that I would do to the previous cars that I owned, which were at BMWs. I had a Porsche before that, an Evo, and cars that were performance-oriented. I came to racing on tracks later in life, basically in the early 90s, my first BMW, a 93 325, which I joined BMW CCA and started doing high-performance track days with them. And so, anyways, I really got hooked on track days and having fun, with the cars. And the Lotus Elise, when they first announced that car in the mid-90s, I just absolutely knew I needed to have that car at some point, because it was, and I know this may sound a bit ridiculous, but it was somewhat a modern version of the Pontiac Fiero, which I could never afford, when I worked there, because I was simply a student. But anyways, the cars, the Elise and the Fiero, actually have some very, very similar characteristics. A space frame chassis, composite body, mid-engine, 2 seats, rear drive, lightweight, small car. And so, anyways, the Elise was absolutely on my short list, and when they finally brought a street version to the U.S., I got on the wait list. And so I looked around. No one was really doing anything for aftermarket accessories and racing parts in the States, and so I thought, hey, I can do something. And so I jumped in on that, and most of my best friends are in the automotive industry, most of who are working at the OEs or, in the supplier base. So I felt like, I had a pretty strong network. And as an engineer, having worked at 3M, had developed so many products. 3M is, innovation is the key there at 3M, and
right.
I worked in product development. I felt pretty comfortable developing product, for automotive, use. And so I thought, what the hell, I'm going to give it a shot. And I kind of don't do anything slowly, so I went at 150 miles an hour and built up this business of aftermarket accessories for the Elise and Exige, and from things as cool as forged wheels and dry sump systems to stuff as simple as cup holders and car covers, and so kind of developed a real broad line of accessories for this really niche market.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, I'd love to get going here with an inspirational quote. It's something I always like to kind of start the show with, and this is something that's been instrumental in forming your life and your success. It's a great way to get the wheels turning here. So, Shinoo, I know you love to drive. Take the wheel.
A quote that I always, I often say, is nothing ventured, nothing gained. And, I think it's Ben Franklin. I'm not sure, but it's just the way I've always kind of led my life, if you will. Give it a shot, take a chance, and see how things pan out. So yeah, that would be the quote I'd like to give to you.
Well, and it sounds like you're doing that with Sector 111, as you started to talk about and share with us there that creating parts and accessories for these lightweight cars. How have you incorporated that success quote in your mind into your business? Well,
no question. The car wasn't even in the U.S. and I launched this company, and so it was something that I felt I wanted to test out, and let's see if we can get someplace with it. And we've tried and launched a lot of different products, some of which have been big success, others that which have fallen entirely flat. Mm-hmm. So a person I really admire, a PhD organic chemist I used to work with at 3M, he used to always say, "Hey man, throw some things against the wall, something's going to stick." And so, something very similar to that. So I've always held that philosophy kind of near and dear to myself and the way I operate. Yeah.
Fantastic, I love it. You talked about when you were a little kid and you could spot those taillights, and cars were an integral part of your life, especially living in Detroit. Is there one pivotal moment you can remember that really instigated your passion for cars, that you really knew you were a car guy for life?
I would just say, I can only my memory has always been, to be just absolutely in love with cars. You know what I'm saying? But I think, having a passion for cars and then deciding ultimately that would be the field that you would pursue and and profession in life, mm-hmm. was probably really just getting the job offer from Pontiac Fiero. For a kid in high school to go work at the factory making that car, that was it. I was locked in at that point.
Yeah, very much so. Very cool. So, Shinoo, what I'd love to do now is take a look at some of the roads you've driven down, or crawl under the hood here and ask you to share with our listeners a huge challenge, or better yet, a great failure that you faced in your career. What's really important about this question has to do with how you overcame that situation and what you learned.
Well, I can tell you I have definitely failed a lot. Luckily I've had a few successes that have been big enough that it's overcome the failures. But mm-hmm. I would say, honestly, one of the biggest challenges that I've had that I managed to get through and persevere through and come out in the end with a degree was frankly earning my mechanical engineering degree at GMI. Mm-hmm. It was an extremely difficult school, very, very intense. We had basically minimum 21 credit hours every semester, and it was compressed into a 12-week semester. And so the kids that were at the school were all the cream of the crop of every school that they were at. And these kids were not just academically bright, but they were all arounders because they had to get jobs. At the time, you had to have a job you had to get hired as a co-op student to also go to the school.
I see.
So, yeah, you couldn't just be, a book-smart nerd. You also had to have, be employable. And so we had some pretty amazing, students, and I definitely graduated from, near the top of my high school class, but I came into this school where all of a sudden, I was nowhere near the top. In fact, I was much closer to the bottom. But thanks to a bunch of great, Fiji fraternity brothers, I managed to make it through that school. I surely couldn't have done it without their help. And so,
sure.
That was, definitely something that I would say was probably a massive challenge in my life that ultimately gave me, the confidence to say, hey, you can keep taking chances, you can keep trying new things, and no matter how hard it is, will it really be as hard as going to that school was for you?
Oh, absolutely. Let's shift gears here, Shinoo, and go to the other end of the spectrum. I'd love for you to share a story when you had a real aha moment about your business, a time when you realized that maybe an idea, a concept was really a good idea and it was going to make it, and tell us the steps you took to turn that aha moment into a success.
Working in this small space, you get to know so many of your clients. You talk to so many. I've really talked to thousands of my customers now, and I've met them, going to these events and you think you know everyone who's bought something from you, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was driving down the street, and I saw this Lotus Elise go by. I didn't know who owned it, and the car had a number of our components on it. It had some of our forged wheels, our two-piece rotors. It even had our little small micro mirror, which is a rear view mirror.
Oh, cool.
And it was like this moment where I couldn't get this grin off my face for hours, because there I saw somebody who I didn't know who had enough confidence in our products and in our company that they bought a bunch of components and put it on a car and were driving around having fun. And that was a bit of an epiphany for me to realize that, hey, there are people out there that I've gained their trust, not by actually physically meeting them, but by what we've done and the reputation that we've created for ourselves in the market, and that they're willing to spend thousands of dollars with us. So that was kind of for me, a bit of an aha moment.
I'll bet. Fantastic. Well, my next question has to do with a proudest moment, and maybe you just described it, but maybe not. Is there one moment, and I'm sure you've had many, but is there one in particular as far as a proudest business career moment that really stands out?
With racing and this gentleman racing that we do, we've been a sponsor of the Lotus Cup Series from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And, we're selling parts to our clients. We're out there racing, and we decided to enter an Elise of our own, and we kind of use it as a bit of a test bed for us. I mean, all our cars are test mules, but this one, we decided to really go for it and put in things that had never been done, like a dry sump system. And I take that back. Lotus did have a dry sump that they had on a couple of cars, but we developed a dry sump system and a host of other things, and we ultimately set a couple of track records.
Oh, wow.
In that season. And what made me the most proud was that we beat cars that we really should not have been able to beat, that were lighter than ours, like the Lotus 211, which, an Elise should not be able to beat a Lotus 211.
You wouldn't think so.
Right, and we were thumping the Exige Cup cars, and so it was an exciting moment for us to be able to say, hey, look, we can make this happen, we can do this, we can even beat some of the best factory efforts through the components that we've developed and tuned and put onto a car.
Wow, very awesome. Let's have a little bit of fun here. What was your first really special car? And if you could share a memory that you had with that vehicle with me.
I've had a lot of great cars. I'm one of these guys who kind of changes cars like underwear. But really the first really super, super cool car that I think, anyways, that for me was a Porsche 911, and it was the 993 model. Mm-hmm. So it was the last of the air-cooled cars. And I bought that back in, I think it was 1998. And I had almost a 2-year-old daughter at the time. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and put the baby in the car seat in the back. I put my helmet in the other seat. My wife jumped in the passenger seat. We threw our luggage in the front, and we drove down to Atlanta for a track event. And I dropped my wife and daughter off with her friend in Atlanta, and then Alfa went to the Talladega Grand Prix course, which also is called Little Talladega. So it's a smaller road course. Mm-hmm. I think it was a motorcycle course at one point, but it's a Porsche Club event, and it was starting to rain, and this was the first rear-engine car I'd ever owned, so I was really sweating bullets. Yeah. And then it starts raining, and then I'm really getting nervous. This whole lift throttle oversteer issue that everybody freaks out about.
Sure.
Well, what I discovered is that with rain comes slower speeds, and frankly, you develop better car control skills.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
By the afternoon, I was, adjusting the attitude of the car by using throttle, lifting off the throttle, getting the rear to come around, and it was great. So, yeah, that was definitely a really fun trip. and the thought of just bringing my family down with me, dropping them in the same car, and going to the track, having fun, and then going back and picking them up the next day and going home. It was just a fun trip.
Those cars are great. I had a '98 C4S, and it was a really fun car to take to the track. And I think by the time they got to the 993s, they kind of Porsche had dealt with that oversteer issue really well. And that car didn't have the integral challenges that I had a 72S, for example, that had serious issues with that. And
oh, sure.
I have an 87 930 now that you may have to make sure that car is pointed straight before you do anything wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've got a bunch of experience now in Ariel Atoms, and I always say Ariel Atoms, behave pretty much like 80s vintage 911s. It is absolutely rear biased.
Yes. I have not had the pleasure of driving one of those. I got to ride in one once with somebody who was very spirited, and that was a really fun car. I'd like to drive one someday. How about seller's remorse? Is there a vehicle that you've owned that you really wish you could have back in your garage?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could tell you a car and a motorcycle both, But,
okay, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah. I've been riding motorcycles for 25 years.
Okay.
And my first really cool bike was an FCR 400, which I bought in the early 90s. It was like 91 I had that. And I went in and made the mistake of riding a Ducati. And at the time, I couldn't afford to keep both bikes. So I sold the FCR and bought this Ducati, a 93 750 Super Sport. And it was a great bike. And I loved that bike. I kept that for many, many years. And not that the Ducati was any lesser bike than the FCR, but there's somehow that little, 400cc inline four bike has just been one of those bikes I wish I hadn't sold. But
yeah,
four-wheel wise, I had a '74 GTV, an Alfa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in fact, I bought it up, in your neck of the woods, up in Seattle, and and made a bit of an epic journey, driving the thing home here to Temecula, and it was a great trip. It was a solo trip, and it was just. I actually had stopped in at Bramo when they were building the Ariel Atoms.
Nice.
And test rode an Atom at the time. So I think it was 1996.
Yeah.
And so, 2006.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, because I bought my first Ariel Atom in 2007. So yeah, it was the year before that.
Yeah.
And of course, I stopped there, took a tour of the factory, made the mistake of driving an Ariel Atom, and realized that. Okay, I'm going to need one of these one day. So, anyways, and then a year later I bought one. But the Alfa was an awesome car. It had so much cachet, just a cool car. It wasn't very powerful. It's hell, my station wagon was faster than that car, but the handling was superb. You could just toss that car around, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, I love those cars. The styling of them is just beautiful, fantastic, and beautiful to drive. And you talk about bikes. I had a Ducati Monster for a while, actually for about 10 years, 750, that I really enjoyed.
That's what I ride now, actually.
Is it? Okay. And then while I had that, I had an MV Agusta F4, which always scared me to death. Every time I got off that bike, I kind of thought, what am I doing on this thing? But it was just a beautiful work of art.
Absolutely.
And sold it to a friend and it now sits in his entryway in his home. So, as a piece of artwork. So
Tamburini was, I think, one of the greatest modern motorcycle designers ever.
Yes. Yeah, amazing bikes. I mean, even you take the parts off that bike, everything down to all the hidden pieces were just beautifully designed and engineered. Now, this is going to be fun. I want to ask about current projects because I know when I had Bill Thomas on the show, he shared something you guys are working on. So if you could share with our audience a project that you're working on right now that really has you excited and fired up.
Well, there's a couple things. We've kind of, expanded our business. We became an Ariel Atom dealer, 5 years ago, and then we started importing this car, the BAC Mono, and assembling those things. And the Alfa Romeo 4C, we've picked up one of those, and so we're developing parts for that. So we kind of obviously we love these lightweight cars, and from that we realized there's a little gap in the market that we wanted to fill. So we started developing a car about 2 years ago with a friend of mine, Dennis Palatov, who had engineered an interesting chassis. So this new car we called the Draken Spider, and we had been calling it Project Dragon. That was our code name for the last couple of years, and we finally named the thing late last year, the Draken Spider, and it's a two-seat, chromoly tube chassis car with a longitudinal powertrain. It weighs about 1,950 pounds, and the engine's basically a Corvette engine. It's an LS3, 430 horsepower. Yeah, it's just nuts. Absolutely nuts. So 1,950 pounds roughly and 430 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, just an elemental purist machine, much like an Atom. No ABS, no traction control, no driver's aids whatsoever. So it's a pure driver's car, and it's really been exciting. In fact, I was at the racetrack this weekend doing additional testing on our test mule. Mm-hmm. So we're getting really close. I mean, we've sold. Well, we've taken deposits on 5 of these cars, and we're only going to sell 10 this year.
Wow, nice.
So that we can scale it up carefully and just kind of methodically. And so the first one is expected to be complete in late March. Mm-hmm. But we're really excited. It's similar to the cars that we deal with now, but the biggest difference is that it has a V8, and this particular V8 is also emissions compliant in all 50 states. So
nice.
We're confident that it can be registered for street use in most states, versus cars like our Ariel Atom and the BAC Mono. There's certain states where we just have not been able to get them registered. So this car helps solve that issue, because we know there's a hell of a lot of enthusiasts in states like New York and New Jersey where they're somewhat shut out from owning Ariels and
right.
BACs, because you just can't get them registered. There's guys running around on the track with them, but we all know that with sports cars, some of the fun is going out on the back roads and the canyons.
Now, here's a very introspective question for you, Shinoo. If you were a car, what kind of car would you be, and why?
Well, this is definitely a funny question. I would have to say a Lotus Elise, and it is why. Okay, I think it's a performance-oriented machine, which I believe I am. It's small, it's a bit more refined than some of the other cars that we deal with.
Yeah.
And then, frankly, it's just not normal, which, I'm a bit of, I got a screw loose. I'm the first to admit that. The kind of cars that I really, love and have come to enjoy the most are not the most normal cars on the planet. So
yeah.
I think it's a bit of a reflection of who I am as well, I guess.
Very nice. Great answer. Fantastic. So, Shinoo, up next is the last lap. But before we put the pedal to the metal, here's a little something for the Cars Yeah listeners. Do you love vintage cars? Then go to carsyeah.com and get a free copy of the fantastic Filler Up book. It's a full-color ebook filled with fuel filler fun, with over 60 color photographs of vintage cars, plus inspirational quotes from some of the most famous automotive enthusiasts of all time. Simply go to carsyeah.com and click on the free book button on the homepage. Download your free Filler Up book today at Cars Yeah. All right, Shinoo, we're back and we're entering the last lap. You're a guy that's used to being out on the track, so you know what this means. The white flag is out. It's time to really put our foot into it, and I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some very quick blips of the throttle answers. So are you ready?
Yep.
What is the best automotive advice you've ever received?
If this was easy, everyone would do it.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to running your own business and developing parts for cars. My goodness. Would you share one of your personal habits that you believe has contributed to your success?
I think, it's real simple, really. It's just hard work and putting in the hours. That's really what it boils down to.
Yep.
Hour upon hour upon hour.
Yep. How about resources? I know there are lots of them out there these days with the web and everything, but is there one that you think the Cars Yeah listeners should get their hands on? Maybe it's a website or a blog.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because there are definitely, new blogs and new writers every time you turn around. But there's one guy that's been around for a while, and his website is definitely followed by a lot of us automotive insiders that, there may be a lot of enthusiasts out there that may not be familiar with it, but it's called Auto Extremist.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great little insider blog that, provides, some real insight, often critical of the automotive industry, but it's very, very interesting.
And how about a book? Is there one book that you can think of that you could share with our listeners?
There's one book, an enthusiast book that always stuck with me, and it was a motorcycle book, Twist of the Wrist from Keith Code.
Yeah, okay.
And, you always talk about bandwidth and you only have, so much ability to manage, all the controls and everything else that's around you. And so I always use that kind of analogy as I drive on the track and do different things, managing, the limited resources that you have and how you divvy all that stuff up.
Well, listeners, you can find these links that Shinoo shared with us at carsyeah.com/Shinoo Mapleton, and his last name is Mapleton. All right, Shinoo, we're up to the checkered flag, and this last question can be a real doozy, especially for a guy who loves cars as much as you do. If you could only have one collector car in your garage, and this is something you can't sell to buy a bunch of other cars with, so that little trick is off the table, but money's no problem today. I'm going to buy you whatever you'd like. What would that one vehicle be and why?
Well, that's a pretty easy one for me. It would have to be the Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta, the short wheelbase version.
Yes.
I just love that car. It's so absolutely beautiful. It's a Ferrari. It's got more cachet than anything. To me, it's just a cool car.
Is it the design aspect that you like so much, just the looks of it?
Yeah, that, and it's a front engine Ferrari, which is more of that classic architecture that Ferrari was known for, and so it just kind of, to me, it embodies everything that I love about Ferrari.
Yeah, there's nothing like the sound of that V12 when it's at full song. Oh my gosh!
Exactly.
Well, great choice. Of course, you're going to break the bank for me today, of course, but that's okay. I told you could choose whatever you like, so excellent choice. Shinoo, you've taken me on a great ride today, and I knew you would. I've really enjoyed your stories, and I want to thank you for sharing your journey with the Cars Yeah listeners and with me. Could you give us one parting piece of guidance before you drive off down the track in that Ferrari?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of trying. Be afraid of doing nothing.
Yes, perfect advice. And what's the best way for our listeners to learn more about your business and what you're doing?
Well, you can go to our website, which is just simply sector111.com, which is spelled SECTOR, and the number is 111.com. We've got the blog linked on there as well. You can click on that. We got a Facebook page. We got an Instagram, all that typical social media stuff too. But you can definitely go to our site and check out all that stuff. Can
they learn about the Draken on the site as well, or do you have a different website for that?
We have it linked on the website. We do have a micro site as well that is just drakenspider.com, which is spelled DRAKAN, Spider SPYDER.com, drakenspider.com.
Fantastic. And I encourage the listeners, go check this thing out. It is really spectacular. You can find links to everything Shinoo shared with us today, again, at carsyeah.com. Just type Shinoo into the search box, and his name's spelled SHINOO. Thank you, Shinoo, for being so generous today with your time and your expertise, and for sharing your experiences with cars with me and the listeners. It's been a great fun. Until we talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Mark. Had a great time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.